Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and I hope you had a tremendous Christmas. I hope it was fantastic. I got to spend a couple of days there with the boys. It was absolutely awesome. I was really happy with it. And now it's back to work. Now we're getting back in there. So today I wanted to discuss the interesting developments in 8.1 and what everybody's doing. Because everybody's kind of like, not everybody, but there's definitely mixed feelings towards BFA right now. But of course, the new raid is coming, so we are in that lull downtime, which happens. There's nothing you can do about that. It does happen just before the raid. 8.1 feels a little less fun than it should be because it's usually going to be joined by the next tier of content, and obviously we've got gear upgrades and all that coming right now. But they have introduced the invasions, which are giving crazy gear. I've had upgrades for my character that has been farming Mythic all day for quite a while from World Quest turn-ins. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy to see, but it's not uncommon. Like, we reset gear every now and again. It feels a little like it needs a longer video, a longer discussion on the idea that they keep... It feels like they cannibalize their own content so quickly these days. I'm not trying to put more hate onto BFA. This is just... WoW in general for the last few expansions is they all the content lasts for like a few months at best. And then it's just all like erased and wiped out and nobody bothers with any of the old stuff again. So they constantly put themselves in a position, right, of having to redo and recreate the whole game every couple of months, which is really hard to do. It's so hard to just disrupt and get rid of all that content and then make it irrelevant and then try and replace it with something else. There is definitely something to be said for linear progression, but I also understand the arguments against it. So I think that's a bigger topic where I'm going to have to sit down and do some research to talk about it. Currently in my BFA world, farming AP. And getting ready for the new raid, farming AP, and still farming Uldir, actually, in 2 raids. I'm doing it both on my Druid and my Mage, just farming it out. Some interesting stuff that has come up then is the idea of funneling Azerite gear. So if you're in a raiding guild, certainly a relatively high tier one, you'll be aware of this, and others might not be aware of it, but we'll obviously see the flaw in one of Blizzard's systems that has come with Titan Residue, whatever we call it. And what's happening here is there's so much more Titan Residue to be gotten by scrapping the really high-level Azerite armor that it's made sense to a lot of guilds to actually funnel every single piece. To be farming Uldir, which is obviously going to drop several pieces of Azerite armor per run for the whole raid, and instead of using them in a way that might be an upgrade for somebody, and a marginal upgrade, let's say it's got a slightly better trait than the piece you've got already, the likelihood is if you're in this situation, you already have 385 Azerite anyway, but it's the perfect trait or something like that. It's actually to forgo giving it to those people, and even for those guys who may want it for transmog reasons, of course. Not something I'm interested in, but there are people who want stuff for transmog. Not giving it to them, and instead just giving it all to one person to go and scrap. And the idea here is, of course, those guys, usually the guys who have the highest AP, who've not been put off by AP farming like I have. I avoided it for quite a while, actually. My plan with the AP farm is, yes, I know I need to do it. I want to do it for my guild. I want to be a core member of the team. But right now, it would probably kill my enjoyment of the game so much that, in fact, it was better if I took a break from it and closer to the raid. So round about now, I'll actually go pretty hard on farming it up and getting my neck level where it needs to be, which is 38 for my guild. Not too tricky to get if you've been playing since launch. So it's annoyed a lot of people because obviously this isn't really the way it's supposed to be. It would have been better if it was capped or something like that. Again, like most things in BFA, it's like a little bit of extra thinking would have gone a long way here. But at the same time, it's such a niche amount of people that are doing this that there's not really a problem. I wouldn't class it as a problem. I don't want to be somebody who's like bringing more problems to the table with BFA because they have done some good stuff with this patch. They have done some good stuff. The invasions have been interesting. It's certainly reignited world PvP, although in my experience, and you guys can share this with me as well, if you've had the same experience, it's basically turned into... It starts as a bit of PvP, and then more than anything, it just converges into a huge group of players just camping the Turtle World quests. Camping people who are running to do the Turtle World quests, and then, of course, beating them up as soon as they come out of the Turtle World quest, with no chance for the opposition to do anything whatsoever. That's kind of what it's turned into, which is understandable given the state of world PvP right now. We can go back to the discussion we had on Warmode and the options that they could have given players to swing the tide in their favor. We talked about things like having bombing runs and various access to tools if you're on the losing side to try and swing the balance back into your favor. That would have made sense if we could have done something around the turtles in order to prevent this mindless camping, because it's not PvP. As much as Warmode is there to encourage PvP, it's turned into what the worst of World of Warcraft can actually be for PvPers, and it's the reason people turn off PvP. And that's kind of the sad part of it for me. The main reason people want nothing to do with PvP in World of Warcraft is their experience above and beyond most world PvP is in fact just being ganked in unwinnable odds. The Alliance have suffered from that for quite some time in BFA. The Horde are having it now as well. They seem to have done a good job, actually. I'm not slagging them off. They've done a good job with actually getting the Alliance far more prominent on the Horde side. They've done some good stuff there. Whether you're seeing it or not on the Alliance side, I can tell you as a Horde player, yeah, most places I go are actually infested with Alliance players. Maybe that's down just due to the extra bonuses the Alliance are getting now with Warmode. But it has turned into the worst. Most people, if I was to go back 12 years towards vanilla PvP, what was my world PvP experience? Well, there was always a battle going on at South Shore, which was quite normal because we didn't have battlegrounds in the game at the time, so that became like the unofficial battleground. But that wasn't usually that mismatched. There was usually people who were interested in it and wanted some fights, and to be healers and teams and coordination of a little bit going on there, but it was a lot of back and forth. But in fact, most people will probably tell you about Nessingware Safari, where you just had people stood there all day who were just killing anybody who was trying to get the quest. They would be level 60s who would just stand there all day, killing people who were getting around level 40 with, in 1 or 2 hits. That was the world PvP. It would be Tanaris, where there'd be level 60s just waiting outside of Gadget Zan to gank anybody who was going to go out questing. And absolutely no competition with a fair fight. A similar thing, although I haven't experienced it myself because I haven't had to re-level in such a long time, apparently it happens a hell of a lot in Hellfire Peninsula with the guys who have just hit level 58 who end up going to one of the towns in Hellfire Peninsula, and there are level 120s just flying above the town waiting to gank them as soon as they arrive. And that's world PvP. Or as far as most people are concerned, that's world PvP in their eyes, which isn't what Blizzard wants, because that's what actively turns people off. Although those people are having fun, and this is, again, it's a little subjective, right? Those guys who are there, and we've seen them, and you guys are probably aware of this as well, there are people who will do this for 6 or 7 hours straight. They will just camp lobbies. If somebody logs their main, they'll disappear for 10 minutes. That guy's like, well, I'll get back to leveling. And then that guy just reappears again. And they will do this all day, day after day, just camping people. And we're starting to see it again, which I think Blizzard definitely needs to pay some attention to, because the turtle quests, and in particular, I mean, there's some PvP going on with the other world quests. I am seeing that, certainly during invasions. There's some little wars going on. I showed that in a previous video, actually, where I got some nice footage of it. But it seems to be descending heavily into just camping places where people are having to go, which... and are stuck, like they have loading screens and stuff to get out of. So they literally can't defend themselves, even if it was possible to beat 9 or 10 people inside here. So I wonder what Blizzard's going to do to address that, if anything, rather than let it go on too long. This is my only concern. Again, I'm not complaining about being ganked. That's part of having Warmode on. It actually doesn't bother me that much. It's something I accept with having Warmode on. I know some people are like, turn Warmode off. I'm fine with it. I'm actually okay with it. I just know that what this is going to do is just actively turn people off from doing it. Like, what's the point? It's not PvP in their eyes. It's not a battle. It's not a war. It's not a fight. I just get mullered. I just get mullered when I go there. That's not that fun in any form for me. So I wonder if they're going to do something about that as the game goes on, because they have reignited the spark a little bit. That's clear to see. The spark is definitely back. If you're out in the world with Warmode on, you're absolutely going to see that. I wonder what they're going to do about it. But for the most part, what are my projects going forward into the new year? Several things, because obviously I want to make content that helps people get better. I think 8.2 is making strides in the right direction. We are seeing the end of sort of farming Azerite powers, which is a great change. Hopefully that will mean classes stabilize. So I do get asked a lot, like, will you make guides? I want to. I genuinely want to. It's my passion. And this expansion, I'll be totally honest with you guys, I've not felt any real desire to level my alts, and the reason for that is I know what's waiting for me at endgame, and currently those classes are just lesser than they were in Legion for the most part. So that's not a great incentive to go out and level those characters. Previously, I wanted to level those characters because they had new, interesting things that I wanted to check out and play around with myself. I'm not just talking about Legion here. This has been true since when I started doing this, which would have been like Mists of Pandaria. I wanted to try out the new and shiny things that the classes got. I wanted to try them out for sure. In Legion, that was expanded. Not only would I get new abilities with the artifact weapons, which I'd like to play around with and see what's going on, but also had the class haul campaigns to try out on different classes. That was interesting to me. I'm not saying it's interesting for everyone. You know, I've got to put that disclaimer in there if someone goes, class haul campaigns were crap. That's great. For me, I quite enjoyed them. And that was something I was looking forward to. But BFA has been like, why don't you play, for the most part, a less interesting class than you had in Legion? It's like, well, that's not that inspiring. That's not inspiring. On top of that, though, the class changes and the changes they've made with Azerite over these last 4 months should be a clear indicator of how sort of futile it is to make video guides. Like, written guides can be updated in a matter of minutes. Where video guides need a hell of a lot more work per class, per spec. That requires a lot more. What I'm genuinely hoping, and you can hold me to this if it does happen, is that when we are no longer so fixated on the Azerite powers, and they can kind of just stabilize that system out and make it sort of a non-factor, which is what I'm hoping happens, then we can look at doing some content, and that will be more interesting to me to level up, depending as well on what the Heart of Azeroth neck does. So there's a lot of factors in there in terms of doing that. If that doesn't work, we'll be doing the similar sort of stuff that we were doing in Legion, which was focusing more on how do we tackle these specific environments no matter what class or role you're playing. That's generally the idea I'm going to be looking for, is to tackle it in that way. But similarly, over the last 3 weeks, actually, I know some people know I'm making this and want to get it out. I've been looking at other things that people think are helps and see if they actually are. So the next one that will be out in the next couple of days is going to be looking at the Razor Orb Weaver, you know, the keypads. A lot of people who struggle with key binding often ask me, and I've had people bring these things to events, what about the Razor Orb Weaver or the Logitech version or the Corsair version of these keypads? Do you think this helps with key binding? Is this something I should try because I want to get key binding and I'm struggling? Is this going to be the answer I need? So I've been messing around with that for quite a few weeks now. I've had it plugged in and I play around with it every now and again on different characters in order to gauge my response to that. So I'll have that video out for you next couple of days. And we're also going to give it away because I don't want it. I'm fine with the keyboard. So we'll see what we're going on there. Other than that, we're looking at big projects right now. So Legacy, I know I mention it every now and again, but it is ongoing, as well as finishing up our Christmas Souls marathon, where we have, as of recording this, we have finished Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2 is complete. Every single boss is dead. All 42 of the Dark Souls bosses is dead, which has been a hell of a journey. And we're just about to wrap up Dark Souls 3 and going to the final game of the franchise, which would be Bloodborne, and get that done. So that's something, and I know Asmon's doing it as well. I know, but it was something we had planned for Christmas since early August, I think. This wasn't something that was motivated that way. We had it planned for a very long time that we were going to do this, and it's been an absolute pleasure and a blast to do that. So that's what we're wrapping up right now. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, guys. I'd love to know what you think of this PvP situation, because it's something I'm seeing a lot of stirring about, of like people just getting like fed up with it and just not bothering, which I don't think is what Blizzard wants. I'll see you again, guys. Bye-bye.